So we recently changed our minds and decided that we want to start paying off our mortgage early. So today I'm sharing why we made that decision and our plan moving forward. Hey guys, I'm Marissa and welcome back to my channel. Here on my channel we talk about life and money and how you can enjoy life while still accomplishing your financial goals. So if that sounds like something that's interesting to you, then definitely scroll down and hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any new videos. So I recently did a video talking about why I stopped following Dave Ramsey, and it definitely got some controversy. And one of the things that I mentioned in that video of the ways that we don't follow Dave Ramsey is our plan was to not pay off our mortgage early, and instead we were planning to save any extra money that we could to save towards the down payment on our next house, and therefore take the house we're currently in and keep it to have as a rental in the future. But we recently changed our minds and we recently just made a $3,300 payment to the principal for our mortgage. So here are the reasons why we decided to do that. So our original plan was to be a landlord. And something about being a landlord just sounded really intriguing to me. I love the thought of having passive income from rental income. And while we would have a mortgage on the rental house and then our next house, we would be receiving passive income and also being able to hold on to an additional asset, which would be a second house. So there were a lot of parts of that that sounded really interesting to me, and I know a lot of other people who are landlords, and it was mainly just the idea of having that additional income stream. To me, that seemed like a great way to build wealth and a great additional investment. But in the last month or so, I've thought about a few different reasons of why being a landlord right now may not be the best choice for us. First off is landlord laws, and this may be the most important reason of why we are wanting to now forego this, at least for the time being. So we've had the idea of becoming landlords, of keeping the house we're currently in and moving into a second house. We've had that idea since like January, and that's what we were eventually wanting to work towards, but there were other financial goals that we were wanting to work on before that, like finishing our emergency fund. We were also expecting a baby, so we wanted to have everything covered for baby, and then work on increasing our investments, maxing out our Roth IRAs. So we knew that like this was something that we wanted to do, but it wasn't something that we were working on in January. It would be later down the line. So it wasn't until this month of October that was the first month where we actually had the funds available, and we needed to figure out what we were going to do with it. Were we going to work on saving for an additional house, or what was that going to look like? So I know that 2020 has just thrown everyone for a loop, and with the virus and many people losing their jobs, being out of work, unable to make rent, the state of Oregon has suspended evictions. And they did this starting in March or April, I think, and it was only for a certain time period that they weren't going to allow evictions, but that has now been extended, and I don't even know when that's going to be lifted. And that is a huge concern for me. I think that just really opened my eyes to see that there's a lot of things that you don't have control over when you're a landlord, and one of those, it could be a global pandemic where people are out of work and you have a tenant who can't pay their rent. With our idea of becoming landlords, again, we weren't planning to own the house outright. We were planning to have a mortgage on it and then have tenants in the house who would be covering that mortgage payment plus additional money that we would make as passive income. But after living through this and seeing other people who are tenants who haven't received money from their renters now for 6 or so months, that could be really concerning and maybe a stress that I'm not willing to take on at this point. And honestly, this is just my opinion, but I don't see landlord laws getting any better. I feel like they are just going to get worse. And that also in itself is a huge concern. I just feel like there aren't a lot of laws that are protecting landlords. So I think that it's just a little bit too risky for us, or just something that I honestly just don't want to deal with at this point in my life. Maybe later on, but at this point, I just am not sure where things are headed and what that's going to look like, and that just seems like a really big risk. The second reason of why we've changed our minds is realizing that being a landlord is just a lot of hard work. Like, you're responsible for covering all of the maintenance, you are responsible for screening applicants and making sure people pay things on time. Obviously, I know you can hire like an outside company to do that for you, but just all in all, it's a lot of work. And while rental income is passive, it still requires some work and time, and you also have to put money into it to maintain that property. Number 3, it also has an additional cost. When we were planning to become landlords someday and keep our house currently and move into an additional home, we realized that we had a lot of money to save. Now, my plan for this was, even though we were having a mortgage on the house that we'd have a rental for, I wanted to have a lot of money in savings to cover any sort of emergency. That meant I wanted to have at least 6 months of emergency savings for ourselves at our primary residence. I also wanted to have 6 months of utilities and mortgage payments for the house that we'd have as a rental, as that extra buffer of the chance of it either not being rented out or a renter not paying. As well as we would need to save up money for a down payment on our next house. And so looking at that was going to be a lot of cash that we'd need to have on hand. And then not to mention, if we were to be landlords, we would need to save money every month to save up and cover any sort of repairs that would need to be made on the residence, as well as any sort of things that need to be done once a tenant moves out, like replacing carpet or getting other things fixed. So it just seemed like it was going to cost a lot of money and therefore take us quite a bit of time to save up to feel like I had the security of the amount of cash we'd need to move forward with becoming landlords. The 4th reason is that we were unsure about how we should go about saving that money, whether we should save it in just our bank account, like a high yield interest savings account, which gets barely anything these days, or should we invest that money to earn a little bit more that we would then use for these savings goals to be able to, save for a down payment and also have that additional emergency savings. And that's where things get really tricky, because I only want to invest if I know it's going to be a long-term goal, and looking at that to be maybe a 2 or 3 year goal, it makes me really hesitant to invest because it's just a lot more risky to invest over a short-term time period. So while hypothetically we would have the potential to make like 7% if we were to invest this money, that is just hypothetical. It's very risky, and especially the short-term part makes me a little bit more uneasy. And just taking all of that money and putting it into our savings account, that doesn't even keep up with the cost of inflation. So it just seemed that maybe now wasn't the right time for us. The 5th reason is looking more at why paying off the mortgage is a good idea. And that is because it's a guaranteed return. So our mortgage rate though is very low. It's only at 3.5%. And this is why I feel like I've been so conflicted with this, is because our mortgage rate is so low, 3.5%, where we could potentially make maybe 7% by investing it. And so obviously if we had $1,000 and you put $1,000 in the mortgage, you're getting a guaranteed 3.5% return, because 3.5% on the mortgage. But if you take $1,000 and you invest it, you could hypothetically have the potential to make maybe 7%, which is just a lot more risky. So hypothetical, potential, or guaranteed. So while that rate is really low, it's something, 3.5% guaranteed, which is a lot more than just putting money into our high interest savings account, which right now I think it's like, what is it at? Maybe like 0.2% or something like that. It's ridiculous. Actually, I take that back. I just looked. It's at 0.6%, which is still awful. And the 6th reason why we've decided to work on paying off the mortgage right now is that we would love to be able to get rid of PMI. If you don't know what PMI is, it is private mortgage insurance, and that occurs when you put less than 20% down on a house. So we got a conventional fixed rate 30-year mortgage loan on our house, and we bought it just a year ago. And to make this house purchase, we actually only put down 5% on our house, so we did end up paying PMI. I was actually pleasantly surprised at how low the PMI cost was for us. It is about $95 a month, which really isn't that much, but when you think about it, I mean, it would be nice to not be paying an extra $95 every month just for private mortgage insurance. With the type of house loan that we have, once we reach 20% equity in our home, the PMI will just automatically go away. There's going to be no need to refinance. So that also kind of sounded tempting to think, well, maybe we could work on paying off our mortgage at least for now, to get the PMI off of our loan. So like I said, we only put down 5% on our house last year, but because of making just regular mortgage payments over the last year and also seeing appreciation in our house value, we now have about 15% equity in our home, and that's in just a year. So my hope is that maybe within the next year, if the market continues to do well, obviously that's going to vary on how the housing market is doing, I think we could be close to 20% equity for the loan to value of our house. And the process for getting that confirmed, we would just need to pay for a house appraisal, and if it comes up that our mortgage balance is then 80% or less of the house appraisal value, then they will just automatically take off PMI. So here's our plan moving forward. Like I said, I did that video talking about why I stopped following Dave Ramsey, and we don't follow his plan to a T. We do a lot of things that are not Dave Ramsey approved. I will leave a link to that video if you want to check it out. But in general, we do follow a lot of the same financial principles, one of those being investing. So first off, we want to be investing and saving for retirement. Dave Ramsey talks about this in baby step 4 of his plan, saving 15% to retirement. But we want to put more like 18%. And I think that this is just like the part of me that's thinking I can get a 3.5% return on my mortgage, or I could get much more hypothetically by investing in index funds. So our plan is therefore to save about 18% of our gross income. So this means before tax, before insurance, anything gets taken out, we want to save 18% of our income towards retirement. Part of our plan in that is maxing out our Roth IRAs. We each have a Roth IRA that we can put $6,000 into for 2020, and I think that that is also going to be the rule for 2021, but our plan is to continue to max those out, which we already have for 2020, and that will be our first priority in 2021, is putting $1,000 each month into our Roth IRAs, which will be $12,000 for the year, to max out both of them. And then we will additionally go to our 401ks and put whatever else we need to in there to be able to save up to that 18%. We also do get a company match with our 401ks, so we are obviously definitely utilizing that as well. But the 18% is what we're putting into it, and then the company match is just going to be icing on the cake, just a bit of an extra. The next thing that we are working on is saving $200 a month into our son's college savings plan. We recently opened up a 529 college savings plan with our state of Oregon, and we are planning to put $200 a month into this plan from now until he goes to college at age 18. And we do plan to do this when we have future children as well. So Dave Ramsey talks about this as baby step 5 of his plan, if you're following his plan, but we did want to make this a priority as well. So we decided $200 a month. It won't cover all of his college, but it'll cover something, and it'll be a decent chunk. So we also want to make that a priority. And then the next financial goal that we're working on is putting the remainder of anything else we have left over in our budget, putting that towards our house. And for right now, we are planning to do this until we reach that 20% equity in our home, when we can get rid of PMI. And I think at that point we can then reevaluate and see what our next financial goals may be. So actually this month of October, we did make an extra $3,300 payment, and we put this to our mortgage principal. And the awesome thing about that is, by looking at our mortgage amortization schedule, that actually shaved off 5 months of payments on our mortgage. So now I am not against being a landlord. I think that maybe it would be a great option for us in the future, but just for right now, I don't think that it's something that we necessarily want to pursue for those reasons I stated earlier. Also, it would be crazy to think of, we have almost a $400,000 loan on our house right now, and then if we were to get another house and then have 2 mortgage payments, like, it's crazy to me to think of how much debt that would be. And I don't know, I'm just not that interested in it anymore as I was for the last like 9 months of the year. I feel like now that we're at the place that we have that extra money and we need to figure out what to do with it, it just didn't feel 100% right working on saving all this money to then become a landlord. It just doesn't sound that much fun to me. But I'm not writing it off. It definitely could be something that we decide to do in the future. So that is our plan. What we are working on next for our big financial goals, we are working on investing heavily, saving for retirement, saving towards our son's college, and putting that remainder on the house, which does sound strangely like Dave Ramsey's plan of baby steps 4, 5, and 6, but just tweaking it a little bit to save a bit more for retirement before working on paying off the house. My husband and I worked on paying off over $87,000 of student loan debt, and I will say it really is motivating to see that balance go down. I feel like that's a lot more fun than building up savings, quite honestly. I don't know why, but it is. So it was really fun to see our mortgage balance go down substantially, like when we made that big payment this month. So let me know in the comments, what do you think of our decision? Should we be paying down the mortgage early, or should we be doing something else with it? I want to hear your guys' thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Bye.